Let's see, Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's what I see so far.
Perilously close to it.
Have a choice in how you invest with Schwab.
Good evening, everyone. Everyone online, they're kind of rearranging the seating and the council chambers will be online shortly. Please keep yourselves muted since this is a work session and there's no public comment anyway. There's no reason to have your microphone unmuted. Thank you.
You're not recognize.
Here, you can.
Good evening to all of you that are online. I just wanted to give you an update. Council chambers is pretty full and they're rearranging the seating. They'll be online shortly. Please make sure your microphone is muted since this is a work session. There is no public comment anyways. Thank you.
Well, then we'll stop everything and go backwards.
Talk in reverse.
We should be good. We should be good, but we'll wait for Kristen.
Yeah.
Okay, what?
Yeah, you're good.
We're good. All right. Call the meeting to order. We're gonna listen to ODFW make a presentation about the elk that have been taken. Public is not allowed to speak during a work session. If you've got something you want to say about the situation, I invite you to come to the city council meeting on Wednesday. You are entitled to a 5-minute visitor section where you can speak to anything that is not on the agenda. And this is not going to be on the city council agenda. So you have a chance to speak at that time. This is just to listen and learn, and there are questions that have been written down and we're going to get the answers to them, I hope. So with that, I'm sorry, but I do not know who Paul Atwood is.
Mr. Mayor, Paul Atwood. Paul
Thank you.
Atwood, Mr. Mayor, carries that.
All right, so let's just introduce everyone at the table, because I know who everyone is on this side, but Paul, you introduced everybody that you've got here.
Sure, yeah, I've just got a statement, opening statement to read, and then I can take any questions. So next to me, I have Charlie Chamberlain. He's one of the wildlife assistants in Tillamook. We've got Chris Knudsen, who's the watershed district manager. Joe Warwick, who's the fish and wildlife sergeant for the Oregon State Police, and he's based out of Astoria. We have Lieutenant Shugart, who is the Northwest Area Lieutenant, and Austin Reeder, who's another wildlife assistant.
Great.
So, and I wanted to say too that we brought the wildlife staff for the district here because there'll be some of the ones that are out doing work. We work in the area, so you might see their faces around. So we just wanted to, introduce them to the community and the council.
Thank you.
Yep. Let me get started.
I would like you to get started, please.
Okay. Hello, for the record, my name is Paul Atwood from ODFW. I'm the district wildlife biologist and have been working on Clatsop Plains elk damage since 2012. In 2019, ODFW joined other stakeholders as part of the Oregon Solutions facilitated Clatsop Plains Elk Collaborative to help address the exponentially growing elk population in Clatsop Plains and the resulting human elk conflict, such as vehicle collisions, aggressive elk behavior towards people and pets, and damage to private land. These stakeholders included local and state elected officials, including representatives from the 3 cities in Clatsop Plains, officials from state and federal agencies, and local NGOs. In 2021, the collaborative signed the Declaration of Cooperation, which is an agreement made in good faith by all parties involved, including commitments from each organization to do their part to help the situation and continue to work together. ODFW responds to landowner complaints regarding wildlife damage and conflict. The department is statutorily required to assist landowners with alleviating damage on their property. This was our responsibility before the Clatsop Plains Elk Collaborative and continues to be our responsibility. As an agency, we handle thousands of unique damage and conflict situations covering a variety of different wildlife species, from small mammals, fur bearers, and ungulates to large carnivores. Some of the tools we employ are legislatively created programs that the department is tasked with administering, such as the Oregon Landowner Damage Program, which deals specifically with elk. The Oregon Landowner Damage Program is broadly used statewide because it is effective at alleviating elk damage on private land. This program is not available to landowners inside city limits. Once contacted by a landowner, elk damage is verified by ODFW biologists. This program allows up to 5 active tags on a property at any one time, but specifically does not place an annual limit on the number of tags that can be issued for a given property. Tags are issued to licensed hunters from a list provided by a landowner. Hunters purchase the tags from ODFW and use rifled or slug shotguns only. These tags cannot be transferred to another individual. Local elk populations are robust and stable. Local ODFW staff conduct aerial elk surveys with a helicopter annually and often supplement those surveys with ground-based observations. We conduct these surveys in the late winter before bulls begin to shed their antlers. The data we collect aids in our effort to craft big game regulations. Specifically in Clatsop Plains, we conduct a minimum count, which means we don't attempt to extrapolate a population estimate. Throughout the last couple of months, ODFW has responded to many questions from the public with consistent information. However, it appears that information has been misconstrued prior to being spread among the community. To help provide clarity, ODFW has published a webpage with information on Clatsop Plains elk that can be found at odfw.com under the Wildlife Division homepage. And I believe the council was sent that by Chad last week. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight some key points and correct some of the erroneous information that has been circulating locally and on social media. ODFW has been transparent with stakeholders of the Clatsop Plains Elk Collaborative and had numerous conversations regarding OLDP, expanded hunting opportunities, and using any traditional wildlife management tools we could to help reduce Clatsop Plains elk populations. One of our commitments even speaks to this, quote, to adapt hunting options to new information on seasonally problematic elk that come into areas where they could be hunted through increasing tag numbers or creating special hunting seasons. 2, the process for undertaking culling operations is clearly defined in the Declaration of Cooperation and as required in OAR 635-034-0250. Culling requires a specific request from municipalities. No culling operations have occurred to date. 3, ODFW does not solicit public comment prior to issuing elk damage tags or any other action we may take when dealing with wildlife damage on private lands, whether that be raccoon, skunk, black bear, or elk damage. 4, while local harvest of elk has occurred under the Oregon Landowner Damage Program, it was spread out over at least 3 different elk herds comprised of approximately 250 animals and was done over a 3-year period, averaging about 26 elk harvested per year. Despite this harvest, elk populations continue to grow due to annual recruitment or the number of calves surviving to become sexually reproductive adults. It is also important to note that all the harvests occurred outside of city limits. 5, and lastly, from late spring through mid-fall, elk herds are often broken up into smaller groups during the traditional calving, rearing, and rut time periods. Winter is when we often see large groups of elk as these smaller groups combine. Local elk herds often combine into larger groups and are more visible during the winter months. It's clear that there are very different opinions and perspectives on the elk issue in the community. There are people who enjoy seeing elk in their yards and roaming through the community in the streets and on the golf courses. When elk are in these spaces, it can lead to property damage and public safety issues. These are serious issues that must also be taken into consideration when elk and people share the same spaces. On the other side, there are people who are experiencing damage, have been the victim of public safety incidents, or who are concerned about safety risks. In the middle is ODFW, who, as I've stated earlier, is required to respond to these issues, implement state programs, and regularly functions as a sounding board for both groups. ODFW regularly provides information, advice, and tools to help solve damage and safety issues, and encourages people to live responsibly with wildlife. Perhaps this meeting can be the first step for Gerhardt residents on both sides of the issue to begin a conversation with each other. I'd like to close by reiterating that ODFW will continue to manage wildlife based on the data and best available science. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, excuse me.
And we'll start, Preston, do you have any questions?
I got a lot of questions.
Can you
Okay. Okay, so, I mean, I think the big issue is the 78 cows that were culled off of property that was off of Serpent Road. Who from Fish and Wildlife physically checked on the property damage?
I did.
And what was the issue?
So pretty common with properties like that, there was fence damage, pasture damage. Clearly that elk had been visiting the pasture, grazing on the pasture grass, damaging fences.
Well, I've lived here for 78 years,
Sure.
okay? That's always been out there seized property. So I don't know why in the last 3 years there would be an issue.
I mean, that's not a question that we ask landowners. Landowners contact us with a complaint about damage, and we respond to those complaints.
Well, I mean, so just in the last 3 years, there's been an issue,
Apparently, yeah.
not for the last 50 years.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that elk populations have fluctuated over that long time frame. So
Well,
that's really not a question that I can answer, though. That's really a question for the landowner. It's not my choice to make a decision on whether or not there's.
Why not? You said you were.
significant- Like if you call me with a raccoon issue, like or whatever wildlife species, right? We come check out the property, maybe do a site visit. In this case, a site visit is required. But whether or not you've called to complain about a wildlife damage issue prior, that's really irrelevant to us.
okay, so I mean, a raccoon issue is not what we're after.
Sure, I know.
I understand what the elk can do to fences.
Mhm.
And if the landowner has livestock, and in this case, I think they don't have horses, right? And the horses get out on the highway, well, then that's the landowner's problem. If a car coming down the highway and runs into an elk, that's the driver's problem. Okay.
Mhm.
Did you see fence damage?
I did, yeah.
And how does he repair his fences? I mean, there's lots of people here in the audience that have property that the elk run through and damage their fences. And I don't know of any of them that's asked for a special hunt permit.
Well, I can say that, like I said in the beginning, it wasn't just one, it was, not just fence damage, it was fence, pasture.
Does he fertilize his pastures for his livestock?
I have no idea.
Okay. What's the history of the elk damage on this property?
I'm only familiar with the property in the time that I've been visiting it. I don't know prior to that.
So,
Nor would I know on the private land unless there's been a complaint.
and who issues the permits? You guys issue the permits to the landowner and then he passes them out? Or does he tell people that he's got problems and they go to you guys for the permits?
Like I said in my opening statement, the landowner supplies a list of approved hunters to ODFW, in which we issue hunting tags directly to the hunters.
Okay, so there's only 5 issued per property.
There can be 5 active tags at a time.
Okay, so after those 5 are harvested, well, then they can go 5 more.
There could be another 5 issued. Yeah.
And then another 5, and another 5.
Yep.
All right,
That is Preston?
that's it.
Okay, Rita?
Well, the only question I have a lot, and you touched on a few of them. And I might have more later, but every time a landowner asks for a damage tag, they get 5. They can give it to 5 different people.
Not necessarily.
They could keep all 5, right? And shoot them all to themselves, right?
No. Oregon is a 1 elk state. So that means that a person can only harvest 1 elk a year. So the landowner is treated just like any other hunter. A person can harvest one elk regardless of how they do that. Whether that's a general season or a controlled hunt or a damage tag, they can harvest one elk a year in the state of Oregon.
So I'm still confused. So a landowner calls up to have damage and you send him 1 tag or 5 tags?
We don't send the landowner necessarily any tags. We issue those tags directly to the hunters. Based on the site visit that we conduct, but whether that's the landowner could keep one tag a year for themselves per person. So if you've got, say, couple, the husband and wife could each have a damage tag if they wanted, or they could not. But when we issue tags, we issue them to the hunters.
And so the landowner provides you with the list of the hunters.
Of people that they're
Yes.
comfortable allowing to
Right.
hunt on their property.
So let's say he says he's got damage, and then they give you a list of names that would like to hunt, you say, okay.
Sure.
And then how long after that can they apply for another next year? Next year? Yeah, so they have to wait a year before they ask for another damage tag,
The people, individuals,
the landowners.
well, they can, as I think, Commissioner or Counselor Devereaux, questioned me, a property could have 5 damage tags active on it
Right.
at one time, right?
Right.
They're issued, those tags are issued to 5 unique individuals.
Right.
And they get filled, and then there could be another 5 tags issued on that property to 5 further unique individuals.
Right. I
But,
get
but the first set of 5, once they have a damage tag, they can't get another tag until the following year.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But after the first initial damage tag is requested, how long after that can another damage tag be requested by the landowner?
Oh, yeah, they could, I mean, there's logistics involved, right? So like you gotta contact the hunters, you're coordinating there, you gotta, coordinate, whatever, how they're gonna pick the tags up or whatnot. But as soon as, say, the first, in this case,
Right.
if 5 tags are filled, there's still damage occurring, there could be another 5 issued immediately.
All right, thank you.
I mean, as immediately as it's feasible.
Sure.
How many questions do you have, Dan?
I have a few, but you want me to go first? Okay, well, number one, thank you for coming out, because as you can see, there are a lot of people that are very interested in this. And share with you some of the concerns that we've been receiving, or at least I've been receiving. I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else, but the citizens that I've heard from, they're concerned about accountability. They're concerned about verification, some of which you've answered to, but I have a few more questions. They're concerned about oversight. They're concerned about your legal authority or the legal authority under which you're operating. They're concerned that perhaps the owners aren't accurately reporting the number of elk hunted within, and that they're not submitting within the time limit, the information that they're required to do. So I think you've answered some of that, but I'll have some questions as I go along. So just to give you an overall of where I'm gonna be going.
Sure.
So number one, I assume that you're some kind of an elk expert, which means that you know more than I do about elk, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I've been the district wildlife biologist since 2020. I've been working in the district since, I came here in 2012, and prior to that, I'd worked for Wyoming Game and Fish. That's my professional experience. I don't know that I'm necessarily an expert on anything. I don't be a little humble about that, but as district wildlife staff, we're kind of jack of all trades. So like I explained, just in the paragraph when I was talking about how we respond and what the damage and conflict situation we respond to, we're really not, I wouldn't say, maybe you could say that we're experts in everything. I wouldn't really say that, but we deal with pretty much any wildlife issue in the district, so.
But so you've been doing this a little bit.
Yeah.
Enough to know what you're talking about. Okay. What would you say is why would you even do this? What's the goal? Is your goal to eradicate the herd? Do you have a magic number that the herd needs to get down to? Is it just to protect? Help us understand what's going on and why there's a need for this.
For issuing damage tags?
Right, and for the coalition and everything else.
Well, I mean, really, it's been, like I had said, it's been, well, the whole time that I've worked in the district, and really for the 20 years prior to that. I mean, forever, there's always been conflict issues between humans and elk and Clatsop Plains since there have been communities established here, right? So, you know, the collaborative started, as I said, because there was just this growing frustration from what we were hearing, growing frustration from landowners, property owners, business owners in the area with damage and conflict, you know, with elk, and there was pressure on, I think I could say there's pressure on at least ODFW to try to do something. And one of the things that we explained, you know, early on in the collaborative is, with the nature of Clatsop Plains and the kind of multi-jurisdictional boundaries that occur within the project area. I mean, we have, like I said, we have 3 cities, we've got a military base, we have multiple state parks, we have a national park. The ability for us to try to navigate all of those different jurisdictions and competing interests, and try to help kind of fix a problem, if you want to put it that way, was, you know, it's really hard for us to do, right? Like, we can't, as an example, we can't come into a city and, you know, do something about elk on a grand scale without a partnership with the city. That's really what we're looking for. So the collaborative was just a way to get, you know, I think to get all those organizations around the table. And really it was driven by the 2 co-conveners, the mayors of Warrenton and Seaside. They're the ones that, they were the leadership of that collaborative. And it wasn't like a ODFW necessarily, you know, completely driven thing. We were a seat at the table. But, you know, we were there collaborating in good faith with all the other organizations. So.
But your goal was never to eradicate the herd.
No, I mean, objectively, there's no way, even if you wanted to do that, there's really no way to do that in Clatsop Plains. There's no future where, you know, there's just elk are gone from Clatsop Plains. They're just not feasible.
So maybe we'll come back to that, but can you tell me, I don't understand, I've been told a lot of different things, and one of the things that I've been told is that, there's the Warrenton herd, there's the Astoria herd, which is interesting because I don't even think there are elk up in Astoria, or they're not really part of the complaint, but, and then there's the Gearhart herd. Do the elk know that they belong to? I mean, do they are there figures in the blood that say this is my area? Is there a reason? Is it possible that we're not seeing them here because they're just elsewhere?
I mean, yeah, currently, you know, clearly elk don't acknowledge jurisdictional boundaries. And when we look at their biology, they also don't necessarily stay, you know, with 100% certainty with their group. There's always mingling and commingling, and group and herds split, and then they lump through the years. There's a lot of variation with kind of how those social dynamics work. But again, there's no part where elk that are occupying this space only occupy this space and they never leave, and they never have a mixing of individuals. That's just
So if at any one particular time they're not being seen in a location where they were seen before, they could just be someplace else that we're not aware of. Like, for example, when I first moved here in 2018, I used to have them come up and down my street all the time.
Mhm.
But then I realized on my street, everybody took out their apple trees and they don't come down our street anymore.
Sure, yeah. I mean, again, they're calorie driven species. So not surprising to hear that a lack of apple trees would result in fewer elk sightings.
So they don't have a set migration. And jurisdictionally, we're kind of none of this is occurring within our city limits. That's correct, right?
Damage tax?
Yeah, you're not allowing that to happen in
No,
our city.
no, hunting's prohibited within city limits.
Okay, so this is a county area that we're talking about that this is occurring.
Correct.
Okay, and you're a state agency.
Correct.
Okay, so the legal authority, I've had some people send me messages that have looked on your website and they've sent me some stuff about your general season antlerless elk damage tag.
Mhm.
Tell me the difference between that and what we're talking about, what's occurring here, because according to the website, it doesn't appear that any of that should be happening in our area, but maybe we're all reading that incorrectly.
Yeah, so there's the general season antlerless elk damage tag is a designation that the agency can make over an area that allows for an antlerless elk tag to be purchased over the counter, unlimited. It's got broad season dates. So general season unlimited tags mean there's no control on harvest. So anybody could buy that tag. It's their elk tag for the year, and they could fill it, and we could sell unlimited number of tags for that area. That's not what's going on here. The damage program is, like I explained earlier, it only occurs on very select private land, and it's a program administered specifically to those private lands that qualify in response to damage on, in this case, elk.
Okay, so what you're saying, if you're saying it's responsive, right?
The damage program?
You respond when somebody calls and says, I have a problem. And you're saying that you go out and you investigate, you look at it. It's not just a phone call, I hope?
No.
Okay. So do you know if afterwards, if the damage has been repaired, is there an ongoing problem? Is there any discussion with the homeowner about other ways, or the property owner, other ways to solve the situation without it coming to having to give out a damage tag?
I mean, so when we visit a property, or we get a complaint about elk, or we visit a property, there are tools in the toolbox to help try to, alleviate damage. As I said in my opening statement, the Oregon Landowner Damage Program is popular because it's effective. Many of the other tools, we always have those conversations with landowners about, what would really solve damage, what are kind of the best courses of action to take to help solve the problem. But we can't necessarily require a landowner to, do something on their own property. So I know that probably the undertones of that question are, why don't we just tell landowners to build bigger fences so they keep elk out? Well, we can advise them of that, but we can't require a landowner to build a bigger fence. We can counsel them, but that's not always, feasible, whether that's, every situation is a little bit different. Some landowners don't have the money for it. Sometimes there's, building codes that, dictate the different, fence heights requirements or stuff like that. So,
So, and I think you already answered this, but damage tags, can the property owner sell them to somebody else? Is he making any money? Is he creating a private hunting lodge?
No, if we find out that a landowner is selling damage tags, we stop issuing them.
And do you happen, do you have any follow-up, or do you happen to know what's happening with the animals once they've been taken? What's happening to the meat? Do you have any system in place to track that? Or, I mean, I presume that these hunters are eating them. We're not having reports of carcasses, and you're not having to go pull out carcasses that have been just shot and left there, are you?
No, and in fact, that would be a wildlife crime to take an elk on a hunting tag and then waste the meat. The hunter's required to take that animal with them, and once it's under their possession, they're not allowed to waste wildlife like that.
And report it.
Okay, you. Please. Okay, I know that sometimes some of this meat is showing up in the local food shelters, because I've seen it there. I know it, but there's no system in place right now to require that a portion of it be donated or anything like that. Has there ever been any discussion about that?
No, I would, no, there's no system where these elk would be donated. I would suspect that the elk meat that you might be seeing in local food banks is actually the result of animals that are taken by, that are seized by OSP under criminal cases and then donated to charity. It's yeah. These tags require the person to take it home, and a food bank couldn't accept elk meat from a random general public.
One of my concerns is, I can see both sides of this argument. I can imagine that if I had the elk coming in and destroying my property, I would want something done. And I would probably be less pleased with them. On the other hand, I'm an animal lover. But I know myself here in Gerhart, in the past 2 years, I have seen at least 2 stampedes when the elk were all together. One was on my street. They were there and some tourists came out to take pictures, and the elk freaked out. There were probably about 12 of them, and they went running and they kicked down some fences. I was worried about the little kid down the street because they just ran through a yard indiscriminately. And another time I was walking my dog up on Marion, and I happened to notice a couple were down the hill, down by the golf course, probably a good 150 yards away, not anywhere close, but I didn't realize that there were many more of them hiding, and somebody on the golf course did something, freaked them out, and the whole herd came running at me in a stampede, me and my dog. And it was a scary moment for me, so I can see where people, where people say that they're not a danger to humans, and I say, yeah, they are. And then also my husband hit a deer, just a deer in our 2500 truck. If he had not been driving our 2500 truck, he would not be alive to tell the story today. Have we been having more human encounters? Is that part of what's driving this, or are we having more of a problem with that?
Well, we've definitely been, I think, I'll let Sergeant Warwick speak to the specifics, but I think between both agencies, we've definitely, like I said, in my experience here over the last, 11 years, it's been a consistent, response on public safety issues. Probably the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it's been worse, certainly. And, with our monitoring and data collection, like that's really not too surprising, because we've seen those elk herds continue to grow. So as you have, from our experience, it's pretty clear, as you have more elk, you're gonna have more conflict.
As a biologist, would you think that might be responsible for the predator reports that we've been seeing recently? I know we've been seeing bear and cougar in town and in places we haven't. They're not every day. Is that could that be part of our problem?
Ask me that question again.
Well,
I'm not quite sure.
we're hearing more and more about cougar sightings up and down the coast.
Oh,
We're hearing
sure.
more and more about bear. We just had bear and cougar sightings here the past, since summer?
Yeah. So those predator populations, whether that's bear, cougar, in those specific instances, those populations, those animals move. They've got some They've got actually pretty large home range sizes, but they're also, like any wildlife species, they're calorie driven. So where there's food, they will go. You know, so I mean, I guess could be, we haven't gotten a ton of Gerhardt specific bear or cougar complaints or reports that I'm aware of. So I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to speculate on that, but there's certainly a chance with you know, prey sources around that, you know, corresponding carnivores would, I mean, they're following them. That's how they survive.
Okay. And then the last thing, you said that you're tracking these requests, and some of the folks that have written to me, they're concerned, they want to know how can they verify that information? Is there a website that they can go to track who is hunting for these, or where the damage tags are given, what kind of, so it goes back to the accountability. They're wanting to know how can they get more information about what's happening.
Well, like I said, we don't, you know, public input's not required, and we don't hold public forums prior to issuing damage tags. In real time, I'm not yeah, we've never had that request before. I don't think there's, you know, we don't issue any sort of, there's no database that somebody can go to see which one of their neighbors has any other hunting tag, and this is really no different than that. You know, really, I think if the public's concerned about which one of their neighbors has damage tags, or how, you know, what might be going on there, I just encourage them to, you know, go talk to their neighbors and have a conversation. And really, that's one of the things that we encourage landowners is like, hey, this is going on. Like, we encourage landowners to have conversations with their neighbors, so everybody's kind of in the know and everything's up and up there. But yeah.
Okay, well, what you're telling me is that you're not gonna give me specifics, and nobody else can get the specifics, so there may not be any way for the public to have any kind of accountability in this?
In real time? Is that what you're asking?
Well, not in real time, but in you know, it would help people, it would alleviate their concerns if, and help perhaps combat some of the bad information if you didn't name specifics of who's getting stuff, but just, you know, so many damage tags were, and it might also help you track trends or things that are going on, or identify problems that perhaps you weren't aware of. Right now, I think that our community is very concerned about one particular property owner.
Right.
And that's a concern for me. Are there more property owners than just one?
In the local area, like, I mean, there's a number of property owners that have damage tags issued to them in Clatsop County. I mean, like I said, this is a popular program throughout the state. I think really if the public wants specifics, they should submit public records requests. Because that's really our way of disseminating that information. It would, like I said, we don't have like kind of a standard database made, but if we really want specific information, we point the public that way.
Okay. Is it, I mean, this is Gerhardt, and this isn't even occurring in Gerhardt, and we're having this conversation.
Right,
You can see how many people are concerned. Are you getting more concerns from outside of Gerhardt, or the other areas in the county is worried about this?
Not really. It's been pretty much Gerhardt specific.
So is there, how do you help me make everybody feel comfortable that you're not going to eradicate the herd, that you have, like, that there's some kind of system, or that there's some kind of planning, or there's some kind of forethought going into place, and we're not just, you know, going to give out unlimited damage tags without making sure that we are not doing real damage to the population? Because trust me, as I told you, I don't think it's best for the animals themselves to be here in our town. I know some people like to see them and like them to be our yard pets. I think it's best for the animals to be on the other side and not crossing the roadway. It's best for them, it's best for us, we're not hitting them, they're not causing damage to our property. But on the other hand, you know, how do we know that we're doing the right thing, and it's not just we're not gonna be surprised when they're all completed or not. Help me feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there's really no future where, even if we tried, there's really no future where, it's possible to eradicate elk from. There's just so much, wild habitats, just across the highway. Elk are coming and going, and like I said, local populations are robust. That's just really not possible. One of the things, and clearly there's folks here because they believe that elk have been eradicated. Just because we're not seeing them in town. Our data really suggests otherwise. I went back and looked at, where we counted out during our flights in early 23. And there was a group in town, but there were several groups scattered, in the Neowana, down in Seaside, around the airport, and kind of up Delmore Loop and Surf Pines, kind of around the general area, but just not in town. Yeah, I mean, so as far as eradication goes, really the damage program's not meant for that, and it doesn't function that way. So as an example, if you have, if you're continuing to, or say you stop experiencing damage, if there's elk have moved somewhere else, which is often what happens when there's harvest occurring, they avoid the property, then the damage is reduced, right? And if there's a conversation there between the agency and landowners. So it's like, hey, we're not getting, we don't continue to issue damage tags. They go unfilled, there's no elk around, like there's no issue there. So as far as, does that answer your question as far as like assurance?
No.
Well,
Danny, can I say something?
yes.
Okay. I think that a lot of people are here because the history of the elk in Gerhardt. I never saw an elk in Gerhardt until 07. The storm in 07. Okay. All right. So their natural habitat up in the woods there was decimated. And the elk moved down to where they could get feed. And they found the candy store here in Gerhardt. Everybody's got Mescalonia here. That's like turning a kid loose in a candy store. And they found the beach grass down there, it's full of salt. It's like I said in the last council meeting, there isn't a hooved animal that doesn't like salt. Right? So they moved down here. Their range, if you can correct me if I'm wrong. This herd here could be up in Fort Clatsop.
I suppose theoretically, but not.
Okay, they could be up at Crown Camp. They could be east of the highway. They could be split into groups. They could be wherever the lead cow takes them. And so for the people in the audience here, this is not unusual for the elk to disappear out of your heart.
No.
All right, that's something that you guys need to know. And the reason they're here is because there are no predators.
Yeah, that's one of the struggles of managing wildlife and inside city limits is really really any tool to try to deal with a situation like that is off the table.
Yeah, but I mean, all these people here are just worried about, they're not seeing the elk in Gerhardt.
Right.
I mean, they may be on up the plains or someplace like that.
Yeah.
And the question that I've got I always thought that hunting west of Highway 101 was not allowed. I mean, unless under certain circumstances.
No, if I might, the only laws that govern where you can hunt specifically applied to this are city limits. So as long as you're in county, if you're in a property that's outside of city limits in the county and have permission to hunt on the property that you're hunting on, then you're good to go.
Okay.
The law does not prohibit that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and
I'm good.
you're good. Okay, Sharon.
Okay.
Hi,
Hey, Sharon. How are
thank you
you?
so very much for coming,
Sure.
and thank you so very much for your patience on the phone with all of us. I know it hasn't been easy. I have 2 pages of questions, a lot of which I sent you. These have been sent to me from concerned people.
Yeah, I tried to answer as many of those as I
You
could.
did answer some of them, but I've got more.
Sure.
How many damage tags are issued per year in Clatsop County?
In Clatsop County specifically, I don't know that I could say specifically to Clatsop County. We manage on a wildlife management unit basis, which includes some of Western Columbia County, and Saddle Mountain unit also dips down into some Tillamook County. So it'd be tough for me to speak to that specifically, but if you wanted hard data, we could submit a public records request. But I mean, if you want me to guess or like give you an approximation, there's probably between 150 and 200 maybe, somewhere in there.
Per year?
Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, I just wanted to have an idea in my mind of the percentage that are being taken at Weston's property versus the remainder of the
Sure.
area. We've gone through the, can the public have the identity of the tag recipients? When Dana asked about real time, my question would be, is it publicized anywhere for us to look up who's getting what tags when the tag is issued?
No, not without a public records request. And that's, I mean, I would say too, that's, what you're asking for is personally identifiable information. So we're pretty sensitive with, giving out like, personal information like that.
How many years have damage tags been issued for the Weston property?
3. Okay.
The total number of elk killed in that time is 77. I think that's what we've established. How are the elk being killed? How is that being conducted on the Weston property? In other words, do you have a representative there when this is happening? What are the rules that go into that? Is it always guns that are used versus bows? Can you give us a picture of what that looks like?
We don't have a representative, an employee present at the time. Really the manner, the tags issued are, we call them any legal weapon. So they're not, we don't have a artificial weapon restriction on the tags, but really that's a question for the landowner, but that's their choice on how they, if they want to have their, in this case, because we're not artificially restricting them. It's really a question for the landowner and how they wanna, implement that. I can say that conducting the site visit on the property, one of the conversations that we have with landowners, this is, really everywhere, is safe shooting lanes. We talk about the state laws that govern, discharge of firearms and kind of the, what it would mean and who is responsible for, say, doing something unsafe with a firearm on a property like that.
So just to be clear, it could be guns or bows? I'm sorry, I'm
It
not
could be,
Hunter.
yeah, it could be, I mean, but you should really ask the landowner that, it's kind of how they want that.
Have you ever gone to a property and said, yeah, it wouldn't be safe to shoot here?
Absolutely, we do that. We've probably told 25 or 30 folks that in Classic Plains just itself.
So your assessment includes that, what's the backstop and what can happen if.
Yeah, when we do that, this isn't like I want to make this clear though, this isn't the government giving like a stamp of approval, like, hey, this is safe. we have the conversation, we say, hey, look, this is, there are some cases where it's like, hey, it's either not safe, this damage doesn't qualify, the, kind of however that works. So there's some places where we say no, just straight up no, this isn't like, can't do this, right? There are other places where we have the safety conversation with the landowner. And part of that is like, hey, we're gonna talk about this because we're a pretty upfront kind of person. So we talk about it and I explain like the reckless endangerment law and kind of how that would be pursued by law enforcement if there was an issue, and who's responsible for that, which in the state of Oregon is the person pulling the trigger. So there's not like a scenario where the state says, hey, this is good, and you've got like this stamp of approval. No matter what you do here, you're going to be covered. Like, we're not doing that. We're having a conversation explaining who has a liability for making these choices, and having that conversation with the landowner. So.
Do you have a form that you give them that states all this, and do they sign anything acknowledging that they've gone through these concerns with them?
We don't have a form that they sign, but in the cases where there's, say, maybe some safety, it's a bigger safety maybe concern or consideration. We do have, I've went on site visits before and printed off copies of a statute and the landowner the statute along with, the program information, and said, these are things that you need to think about here, so.
Okay, moving on, back to the damage assessment. I understand that you go out and you look at the property. Are you doing that every single year before you issue any tags?
Yeah.
And how do you differentiate between damage that's been done by the elk versus damage that's been done by horses versus damage that's been done by groundhogs? I mean, you get my drift. How can you differentiate, wear and tear, bad weather? How can you differentiate what damage is caused by what?
Yeah, well, it's part of that comes with experience. I've been on a lot of these damage visits, so I kind of know what to look for. We verify damage through biological evidence like tracks, scat, hair, honestly, every damage situation is a little bit different. So the property's different, the situation's a little bit different, but generally looking at those sorts of characteristics. And sometimes I've been on damage visits and there's been animals present on the property. But yeah, collecting some sort of, or verifying some sort of biological evidence is generally how I do that.
So if you have a broken fence, you're saying that you can tell the difference between a fence that's been broken by a horse versus a fence that's been broken by an elk?
Not every time, but generally, yeah.
Okay. Is there any video documentation that needs to be provided by the homeowner as far as the elk actually doing the damage?
No, there's no video documentation required.
Attractants on this piece of property, in the past, there's been salt licks out. Do you evaluate the attractants? Do you talk to them about the attractants? Are there attractants on this piece of property? Is there food that the elk that's put out for the horses that the elk would find delicious? Are there salt licks that are out on the property?
So generally speaking, we have a conversation like that with the landowner. I'll kind of start generally and then kind of zoom into this specific instance. So, when we're talking about a damage site visit, whether that's elk or a bear that's hanging around somebody's house or whatever the issue might be, we're definitely having those kind of conversations with landowners about help yourself sort of thing. As far as this property specifically, I'm not aware that there have been salt licks placed to attract elk, and really in my experience, and Salt licks are really only attractive to elk for kind of a short time of the year. Really, once you hit the rut in September and through most of the winter, they're really not too responsive to salt. So it wouldn't be something that I would expect would be, significantly drawing elk to the area as opposed to just the pasture grass growing.
Okay, so you're not seeing attractants on your inspection on this property?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. How do you document that an elk has been killed per hunter?
So the hunters require, or the landowner is ultimately responsible, but they're required to, whether it's landowner or hunter, we're required to get a report of harvest to verify that. We don't, they're not required to submit any parts to us, but they're required to report it to us.
Okay, so word of mouth, basically, from them.
Sure.
Okay. How many of the elk on the western property do you estimate were pregnant?
Well, pregnancy rates are generally about 60%, so.
So potentially a lot of the elk that were killed on the western property were pregnant.
60%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. According to some staff I talked to in Salem, you have discretion. You personally have discretion about how many damage tags you can hand out per year. Would you agree with that?
Per year?
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, yeah, there's some discretion there. If in the case of like, if say there was damage, we're going down the damage tag route. Like I said, that's a continuing conversation between the district and the landowners. Me specifically over any of the other ODFW staff, I don't know that that's accurate. But like I said, there's that conversation that's going on. So, we're talking, is damage being alleviated? Is it continuing? As we, like I said, we deal with probably hundreds of landowners with elk damage issues. In these cases where, we're issuing damage tags, it's just really, kind of trying to keep our thumb on the pulse of the damage on the property, what's going on there, and just kind of reacting in real time there.
Since the ODFW has not placed any of your collars, I know you've helped the Lewis and Clark people place their collars, only 3 of which are in operation at this point. How can you be sure that the herds on the western property, or the elk on the western's property, are from different herds? How do you assess that?
Well, like I said, those tags were issued over a 3-year time period. So regardless of how many collars are active in the present moment, 3 years ago, there was that number was very different. The way we came up with that assessment was, looking at, the kind of, the majority, I'll try to keep this like, not get too scientific here, but the majority of the movement points of each collar in the different groups, we could see that there were 3 different groups coming into that area. So that's how we knew that there were, the harvest wasn't focused only on, say like Gerhardt associated development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about what I heard in the presentation, and 2 of the collars stayed up with the northern herd, primarily up in the north area around Lewis and Clark. One of the collars ended up between Gerhardt and Seaside, generally speaking. That's what the data that was presented showed. So with the northern herds, if they're staying up, the collars are staying up with the northern herds, and the northern herds aren't coming down to Weston's property, right? Just trying to,
What's that?
Can't wear their colors.
Yeah, I mean, we've had multiple collars through, probably the last, probably 5 or 6 years in Camp Riley. So we know that those Camp Riley elk have come down, and the kind of the southern end of their home range is the property in question. And then there's another group of elk that kind of occupies that, Surf Pines, Delmore Loop, a little bit more proper. And then these elk float up there as well. So that's really how we figure that out.
okay. So that goes to how you track the elk. So you say you do flyovers, and the flyover that you did at the beginning of 2023, do you do the flyover all in one, is it conducted all in one day?
Kind of depends on the year, depends on the weather. So sometimes we can conduct it all in one day. Sometimes it takes a couple different days to get the work done.
Okay, if you do it over 2 or 3 days, how do you know you're not counting the same set of elk then?
Sure, yeah, that's one of the things that we try to take care to not do. So let's say we count elk over Gerhardt. We wouldn't fly Gerhardt the following day. We try to, stay out of an area where we count it out.
Alright. According to some homeowners that live on the east side and pay close attention to the elk, they have not seen any large herds for the past 2 to 3 years. You and I had this discussion.
Mhm.
I think this jives with what you're seeing, that the large herds have fragmented to a significant degree. Also, according to one of those people who is probably knows more about elk than anybody else here and has been studying them for about 30 to 40 years. He's not seen a lead cow for the past 2 years of the east side. He also says that the Gerhardt herd does a loop, generally speaking, that goes through Gerhardt, but also they will go east of the highway, but not east of railroad. So there's not like a distinct east herd versus Gerhardt herd, because Gerhardt herd actually ends up east of the highway. I don't know if that jives with what you've seen.
Yeah, I think that's what we've been trying to explain.
Oh, okay, right. Sorry.
They don't know
That's
they're
right.
long and Gear, that they're Gearhart.
Yeah. So anyway, their behavior, the fragmentation and the no lead cow, has departed significantly from their decades-long behavior of being in larger herds and having a lead cow per herd. What do you attribute this change in behavior to?
Well, that's one of the things that we've tried to explain to the, many public inquiries that we've had. So one of the things that we noticed in 2021 was this was broadly through Clatsop Plains, and I think on the information that we published on our website tries to explain this as well. I know really what the question's getting at is, do we think that hunting is responsible for doing this? And one of the things that we noticed, like I say, broadly in Clatsop Plains, is that that fracturing of herds has been pretty consistent throughout the area, even in groups of elk that aren't hunted or say are minorly hunted. That's true for groups of elk in Fort Stevens and Warrenton and Camp Riley. So why that's the case, it's tough to speculate, but really, I could, from a biological perspective, there's really not much benefit to elk being in a group of 80 or 90 or 100. Their behavior is safety in numbers. They're a herd species, and that herd is what gives them security. But as that herd size increases, the required resources to support that group also increases. So it's really hard to speculate on why that would be the case, uniformly through class of planes. But I suspect it might have something to do with, forage availability at different times of the year. And I think there's also, like I said earlier, we know whether it's, elk herds in class of plains or groups of elk up in the hills. We see a pretty regular pattern of elk herds lumping and splitting throughout the year. So that's really not that uncommon.
Okay, does ODF&W document elk attrition by cougars?
That's pretty tough to do.
Okay, so no. Is dog encounters, people encounters, car damage, is that documented somewhere?
If we get a complaint from, say, a victim of something like that, then yeah, we would document that. I can tell you that we've certainly been on a number of public safety type calls like that, where there have been many instances leading up to the kind of this acceleration of behavior, and we don't hear about it. So, but when we do, we document it.
Okay. Can the public have access to that documentation?
They could submit a public records request and request it, yeah.
Okay. Who owned the elk?
The state of Oregon.
So the public, by virtue of being the state of Oregon?
The broad public, yes.
So everybody owns the elk?
Yeah.
Okay. Could trail cams be used to document some of the movement? And when will you be placing your call?
Trail cameras could be. There's been some experimental work done in Idaho, and we've started some in the Hood River unit and the Sandy Am unit on deer to look at alternate ways to collect herd composition data. So that's kind of we're really at the early stages of that. One of the statistical challenges is using a camera, particularly with females, whether it's deer or elk, and being able to uniquely identify one cow or doe from the next cow or doe that walks by the camera. So there's a little bit of a challenge there, but there's some statistical methods to help try to get around that. As far as when we're going to be placing our collars, I can speak for me and for my staff. We've devoted a significant amount of time in the last 3 months responding to public inquiry. I can say that we probably would have had collars out by now if it wasn't for that, and we would all much rather be out darting elk and deploying collars. But yeah, we hope to do that as soon as we can. We still have, I think I told you this on the phone, Sharon. We, as you alluded to earlier, we entered this partnership with the National Park Service to help them deploy collars that they had purchased. We're at the tail end of that, so I think we still have 3 of their collars deployed. We got one deployed in Camp Rylea this late summer. So really what we're trying to, those are older collars, so we're trying to get those out in the field first before we start deploying our own. So.
Just out of curiosity, does Camp Rylea have basically its own herd for the most part up there? I mean, do they have a significant amount of elk on grounds?
There's a significant number of elk that use Camp Rylea.
And do they apply for damage tags?
No, they don't.
No. No, Camp Rylea. Okay, last question. What's the status of the Elk Collaborative? Do you have any idea what steps have been taken so far? Who represents the citizens in the Elk Collaborative? How can the community be involved in all of this?
So the status of the collaborative, so we started meeting in, I think I said 2019. We met for probably 3 years. It was 2021 when we signed the Declaration of Cooperation. The communities all had representation in that process. Those were open public meetings at the time. Where we are now is, and I'd say their representation was either their mayors at the time or city councilor. Where we are now after signing the Declaration of Cooperation is just as individual organizations moving forward, trying to make progress on our commitments to the group. So that work is, I guess you could say that work is ongoing. Does that answer your question? Did you have something more?
Yeah, but I just thought of another question, I'm sorry.
Sure, fine. I mean, we're here, right?
There's been hunting on the western property before these past 3 years. Are you aware of that hunting? When you issue hunting tags to hunters, do you know where they're going to be hunting? Are you aware that there's been hunting on the western property prior to these past 3 years?
As far as just hunting from, say, a controlled bull tag or any other type of hunting, general archery season?
I have no idea. My experience was I was riding my bike up there in that area, and 2 truckloads of men pull up dressed and jump out of the truck and head to toe camo. And they all have their bows. This was in 2016, I believe it was. And I asked them what they were doing, and they said, by the way, all the elk are laying in the field, in the western field. And I asked them what they're doing, and they said, well, we're gonna go kill some elk. And I said, we can't do that. Naively, I said that. And they said, yes, we can. We have permission from the property owner. And so I immediately called Sheriff Tom Bergen, and I got him on the phone. And I said, is this legal? Can they do this? Because I was a little bit beside myself, admittedly. And he said, yes, it's legal. He says, we have been trying for a number of years to try and get hunting on the west side of the highway stopped. He said, and I will tell you, I am a hunter, and this is not hunting, this is a slaughter. Those are his words, not my words, okay? So anyway, and I went down, Matt Brown was our mayor at the time, I found him, I said, can they do this? He said, yes. And then I went to our police station, and Vince and I think maybe Ian were here, and I said, can they do this? And they said, yes, it's all legal. So that's my experience, that was 2016.
Yeah, I'm not any more familiar with what that landowner allowing hunting on their property than I am any other specific private landowner.
So you're saying that when hunters get their tags, they're not telling you where they're going to be hunting?
For damage tags are issued to a
Right.
specific property.
But if that was outside of the damage
If
tag,
it was a general season, no.
well, it was probably like September.
Yeah, it was probably a general season archery tag. And we don't,
You don't do
hunters
that.
not required to disclose to the state where they intend on using that.
Okay, all right. So potentially, he can have a damage tag program on his property, and he can have a general season hunt on his property.
He could allow, a landowner could allow a general season archery hunter to also hunt.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
Don't they, when they report it, though,
I'm
have to
sorry,
say?
this is not the time, okay? If you've got something, come on Wednesday, you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry,
All right, Rita, you have another question?
I have just a few.
Oh,
Well, no, just 3. So, does the size of the property determine how many damage tags are given out?
No.
So if I had a half an acre piece of property on McCormick Gardens Road and they ate my Escalonia, I could get 5 tags. Well, let's say I had an acre on McCormick Gardens.
The damage tag program has very specific requirements. There's no minimum acreage requirements. like I said, but generally speaking, the property has to be used in kind of a certain way or a certain kind of damage. So we're not issuing damage tags for folks for like landscaping or gardening damage. And as I alluded to earlier, we have many requests in class of plans for damage tags that we have to politely decline.
Can damage tags be used throughout the year? Does it have to be a hunting season?
The damage tag program runs throughout the guiding statutes of elk hunting. So in this state, by statute, we can hunt elk from August 1st through March 31st.
Okay.
That's also the dates of the damage program.
So the damage tags can be given out when it's not hunting season, that's correct?
Mhm.
So it has
That's
to be-
not correct. It has to be between those August
Okay.
1st and March 31st.
All right. And then in your opening statements, you alluded to social media and a lot of the misinformation that was being posted and a lot of things that were not true. Can you tell me some of the things that are being posted that were erroneous? So
we were, I thought I had a list in my notes. So we have been accused of conducting a secret culling mission. We've been accused of issuing damage tags kind of without informing or the blessing or being transparent with the collaborative. Help me out, what else was there?
You've contacted the Westons.
Oh, yeah, there was the conspiracy that we contacted the Westons to try to do this ourselves, that it was our idea, sort of deal. I mean, it's been a lot.
So, well, thank you. And I know that most of the people here, and I don't speak for all of them, but the consensus is they're not against the state and they're not against damage tags. I think their biggest concern is that so many elk were killed on one property. And that just seems like, Councilor Sharon said, it just seems like a slaughter. And I don't know how that, I mean, we're deer Hartians, so we can't say what goes on out of our city, but it just seems like there should be some way to stop this. So that's, and thank you for coming, I did great, and thank you guys, so you didn't have to say much, thanks.
Sure.
Can I ask?
All right, Dana.
And it goes back to, I support the mission again. I wanna repeat, I don't want the animals in our town. They're lovely animals, but whenever these animals are in proximity with human beings, it's not good for them, it's not good for us. I don't want them crossing the 101 and being in danger to people driving up and down the 101. I don't want them being in danger here. But, so the first question is feeding. Is there any kind of penalty for feeding or for trying to lure them onto your property?
That's as far as like
My neighbor puts out a big box of apples for them.
just for feeding. So not a state law. We encourage local governments to enact no feeding ordinances, and I believe there is a no feeding ordinance in the city of Gerhart.
Okay.
But yeah, there's not a state law for that.
Okay. And well, I appreciate you coming down, because I understand that we have no authority. This isn't within our purview, this isn't our jurisdiction, we have no authority over you, so I appreciate you coming out here. So I'm gonna make just a friendly suggestion, and it is truly a friendly suggestion, because I do support your mission. I think that, I know that you can't give out specifics of who's doing what, but it would probably make people a lot more comfortable if they could track the number of just the sheer number of damage tags you're giving out, so that they can be comfortable that you are doing what you're saying you're doing, and kind of tracking and not letting it get out of hand, or not letting one guy run a hunting lodge, which, so I think better communication would, and I know you've got limited staff, but I'm just telling you, we're in the who, what, where, why, when generation, if people, the public wanna know.
Sure.
And we just talked about, these are their animals, they wanna know what's happening to them, and it's not fair to tell them, you don't get to know because, we've gotta protect the hunters, but tell us how many are being taken and where they're being taken. And then also, I know part of the collaborative was talking about education. We have a lot of people here in town, I gotta imagine in Clatsop County is growing also, but since COVID, we have a lot of folks here who don't know, how dangerous the elk can be. And all you have to do is Google elk versus human or elk versus car on the internet, and you see how people learn in a very bad way those lessons. If somebody doesn't tell them, you're from the city, they're not your friends, so don't go taking pictures. Cause I've seen people here in the park, walking right up on them and trying to take pictures of them and causing problems, so.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So that's a friendly suggestion.
Education was one of the big points of the collaborative. Because that's one of, really when we look at all, not all, but at least many of the negative interactions between elk and people, there's often some sort of human behavior that's in the background occurring that leads up to those situations. So yeah, education is definitely different.
Any other questions from the council? Gentlemen, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming out. It was wonderful for you to educate everybody about what's going on. I believe it is and will be in the future as they disseminate this information. Anyway, council, we're gonna have a meeting after the people that don't wanna be here.
What time Wednesday?
Pardon me?
What time Wednesday?
Wednesday, city council at 7 o'clock.
Maybe on a wolf or some bald eagles, or maybe on a grizzly hunt.
Okay. Are you, Chad? Thanks for being here.
Council Chambers, you're muted.
Page 4. Down at the very bottom, under council communication guidelines, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. It says, meetings with interviews will generally be scheduled 1 hour before the regular meeting. We've had an issue with this before, Mayor. You remember how we started our interviews at 6 o'clock,
Yeah,
and we were done by 6:30, and we had to wait around for a half an hour.
right, and that's why I've been pushing every time we have something before that we immediately go to the city council.
I agree, 100%.
Okay.
That should be written here. That city council meetings will begin when the interviews are over.
Well, if you're gonna do it that way, don't you have to let the public know that
Yes.
I mean, somebody might show up at 7 and the.
Yes.
That's why when we notice it, it's always noticed saying council meeting does immediately follow.
I would probably, Chad,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
would like put that sentence in caps on the notice,
Okay,
right?
Okay,
Department page 4.
Damon, yeah,
This question, time limits, not exceed 2 hours, time people, mayor last 5-minute break, needed is generally included 1 hour, generally included for 1 hour.
and then, but with, yeah. with-
Okay.
And then I have one other question, it's not a concern, it just was a question. It is on page 6. Yes. On the second paragraph, mail addressed to the mayor and council will be circulated by staff as soon as practical after it arrives. So, does that mean you'll put it immediately in our mailbox? Or does that mean you'll email us a copy of the mail?
I think that currently we've been putting it in people's boxes, and allowing them to be opened by the counselor or what have you.
yeah,
And then if it's emailed to us,
Right.
we'll email it to you. But it doesn't necessarily go to everybody unless it's a concern of the council or something for correspondence.
Okay.
And sometimes we have to disseminate that, the piece of mail is directly to you, it may not be correspondence. But I think that's pretty well how we handle it.
Well, yeah, just the way I read it, it looked like if you got an email to the mayor and council, or just the mayor, or, I don't know, it just would seem like you would immediately forward it to us.
And I think that we pretty well.
Yeah, all right, never mind.
okay,
Yeah, and if it's specific to an individual counselor and it's about a specific something or another, we may not make a correspondence. It might just be something between that counselor and the public. But
Okay.
yeah, generally, but we'll default to correspondence. We'll just say, okay, this is for everybody.
is that it?
That's it?
Sure.
Okay, my question is, the sentence on page 4, in that same paragraph, says the staff shall not open mail addressed to individual officials without authorization to do so. So I know that that staff, accesses, all our emails. Have we given, they were all the ELK emails that were addressed to.
Those emails that were addressed from other people went through my email. So we only provided information when it was CC, forwarded, what have you. Your name was probably on it, but we do not have access to your email.
Okay,
Now, I am able to make requests through Google as a public information request, and they have a process to where I think that they can get it, but we've never had to do that.
I'm sorry, did we unmute?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Thank you for checking that.
okay, so, I was confused about that, so you're not seeing the email that came through to my counselor position from the Sundays Dogs people, which it shouldn't have got.
No,
Sunday dogs.
wrong email address?
For dog food.
No.
Oh, what's I done in my cousin?
I understand we have the ability to do it, and during that process, we were getting so many informational requests, I did check with Google, and yes, there is a process, and they are able to, but we've never.
Okay.
And
then-
if I did do it, pardon me, I would involve counselors as well in helping make that decision.
Okay, great. And then on page 7, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down, workshop or training meetings. It says that the work session, I'm assuming workshop is the same as work session, right? Is it?
No, I think the workshop might be, well, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, let me ask my question, you can tell us what you think about that. It says these meetings are public meetings open to public attendance and may be held with or without opportunity for public input. So my question is, can we have work sessions where there can be public input?
Yes, then we have.
Okay,
I can't recall if we have, but in the last couple of years, there's been opportunities to where Mr. Mayor or the council will request that we put in there that we will take 3 minutes per, 5 minutes per person to discuss a specific issue. You have that at your use.
So can we clarify that, because I think that does, what they're referring there is what we call a work session, so maybe we can clean up the language on the title on that, the bold, and make that work session.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through and double check.
Because I had the same question initially reading through it, it is to all, intents and purposes, it's what we're doing now, we're not allowed to make a decision, we can discuss stuff, but we don't make decisions.
Yeah, I don't see any other reference to work session in there, so I think that's maybe what they meant.
So just
I'll look into it
clean up the
closer.
verbiage on that one.
We stole that from.
Anything else? Is that a no shake or is that just a shake?
yeah, no, I have nothing else, thank you.
Sorry, we're just.
I'm tired.
Good to defend you. Good to defend you.
I thought you had a bad meeting, not a bad day.
All right, Dana, is there anything else?
Yeah, just a couple of things that following up from when I went to a couple of times during League of Oregon Cities training that I received recently, and they brought it back up again in Eugene. There are other, CIS has talked a number of times about they're having problems across the state. Vast number of the cases that they're defending on are cases where a new counselor comes in and doesn't understand the rules and creates sort of a hostile work environment for the staff. They don't understand the separation of powers like we do, where we make the rules and then we tell them what the rules are, and then they run with it. Like, I can't just go tell the police chief this is how you're going to do things, or I can't tell Public Works, go do this. And one of the examples that they gave was an excellent example of an elected official in another town where he got flagged down as he was driving down the street. Somebody said, hey, could you do something about these potholes? And he saw Public Works there, and he said, hey, Public Works, go fix those potholes. And they spent all day long fixing the potholes, not knowing that what the city manager knew, that 2 days later they were gonna tear up the entire street. So those kinds of things are what they brought up, and it's usually they set a problem with new counselors. So what they suggested is that at minimum, after every time you have an election cycle or a new appointee, but also maybe perhaps once a year, we require that you do a quick review like this, and everybody has to sign off on the rules again. And I think that that's probably a good idea, because I know when I first was sworn in and then a lot of information was thrown at me, and it wasn't until I got time to go back through this that some of this made sense to me. So that would be my thing.
Bottom of page 9, it says periodically.
Right.
We will review when that's.
I personally think that should be a once a year. We can do it either with an election cycle or when there's not an election during that year. Like when there's an election, we do it in January. So we just do it every January, and then we'll catch the election years too. It'll only take us a couple of minutes to do it.
I can agree to something like that. going over the rules like this.
Yeah, yeah, because things might change. And then as far, Public Record Act requests, since we've been getting so many more of those, I would like to know, frequently they talk about a city has a person who's a recorder who is responsible for collecting all of that information on our behalf. Like, I'm sure that counselors, when they come and they go, they have a lot of information, and if one of us moves on, like, for example, when Jesse moved on, a Public Record Act request could still come in for up to a couple of years ago. How are you guys capturing that information? How do you know that I have information at my house that you might need?
We don't at that point, nor is it, what we'll do is we can reach out to people. If this was a public information request that involved Counselor Jesse, who is now Resident Jesse, then we would reach out to them and let them know that that was it would be their responsibility to capture that information.
Would it be beneficial to write that into this, to put new counselors on notice that, the documents that you create or the documents you have are subject to public requests and need to be either retained or turned in at the end of your tenure?
Yeah, maybe a statement in there about the retaining laws with Oregon.
Yeah.
So that
And
it
then,
just
and then
helps them
you're
spells
expected
out that
to,
you may be
Right.
approached.
and I know, I'm confident that we are responding to those Record Act requests appropriately, but I just wanna make sure that that everybody in here is protected. So maybe we add in here that something that tells people that you are subject to those and that you will respond in a, as soon as possible or in a timely manner. So that if you put out a request, you don't get 5 people ignoring your request for information. Okay. And I'm done.
You're done.
I don't know.
Oh, good. That's all right, you're the tired one.
Do we have media that attend executive sessions?
Yeah.
Every time they lay a story, it's usually there.
And how do we know they're keeping that confidential? I mean, I know they're not publishing it because it says here they're not supposed to publish it, but
We don't,
can't they just go and tell like 10 people?
sure. But then that's a violation and we can keep them from coming into
But we
the
wouldn't-
chambers.
So we would know they were.
If we heard about it,
Right.
it's the only way.
Yeah, I don't know how we would know, but thankfully, we haven't had any issues with that. And I can only remember one executive session where there wasn't a press here. I think it was just a slow, not very interesting thing. So generally, we're able to get them here. So far, my problem, we haven't had a
Okay,
problem.
so we're not worried about that. Second question is, are there similar rules for the planning commissioners? They have a-
Might be a good idea to. In all your free time.
Yeah, no, they're not legislative in action, nor are they elected, so I don't think that they have quite the, the power as you counselors do. But, and we have, and during this time, rules of the council, this was, also put together when things were getting pretty crazy. And we felt like, as a council, we felt like, all right, we just need to do some things in here to remind us that, be good citizens. And that's what this was for.
Right, but there are some things in here that, as far as behavior and how people are relating to the public, it might be applied to the planning commissioners, given what happened at the last meeting.
What happened? Oh, I'm sorry. All right. No, it's right.
It was just, there were reports of people that were kind of stumping at the post office, telling people what they were going to do.
Oh.
Asking people to,
No,
write
it's
up.
not, I'm talking about behavior of a planning commissioner at the last meeting.
That's what I'm talking about. That was some of those issues, is that, down at the post office talking about the issue or what have you.
I understand.
or even trying to promote people to get involved or write letters or go against or something like that. Now, part of that is just politics, you know, where you have the ability to talk to your residents and, you know, you're able to have these conversations. You can even tell them how you feel. You just can't, you know, tell people that this is the decision you're gonna make and you're bringing in everybody else and that sort of thing, but you know, we talked also about, you know, maybe doing another government ethics class and involve the planning commission as well, but I'm not aware of any planning commission rules, but we'll look into it and see what they are out there.
Yeah, I was referring more to decorum in the meetings.
Oh, well, there's been, yeah, and there's that. There were some feelings for during the last particular issue. Not sure what rules to put into place that already weren't, but you know, it's just people behaving differently.
Okay,
I'll look into the planning commissioner's rules just to see what there is out there and see if there's anything that's interesting for us.
anything else? Preston, you good?
I'm good.
Amanda, you're good?
I am good.
Sharon?
Yes, sir.
Dana?
Okay, thank you for those ideas.
And
Get back to
thank you
you
for
on
this
that.
ordinance. I was being really